What's up, everybody? It's Carpo at work early in the morning. I don't get a lot of time to make my videos, so sometimes I get to work early so I can get my thoughts down. But I've been thinking about Zen philosophy and how humorous it is. You know, Alan Watts covers a lot of Zen and Buddhism, and you could say Zen is a form of Buddhism. I don't like to label or categorize, systems or belief systems, but Zen isn't really a belief system so much as an application of life. This is just my perception of it. I see Zen Buddhism as kind of the pinnacle of Buddhism itself, in a way. It's getting past all the facades and all the trying, and realizing that you just need to be. And the Zen teachers and the things that they would teach their kids, or their students, by saying, moo like a cow, and then they go moo, and they say no. Moo like a cow. Moo! No, moo like a cow. Moo from your stomach. All these funny little things and these ideas. But it's kind of humorous. It's kind of like a joke. It's like making a joke out of life, and but taking it seriously and realizing that, for example, we see ourselves as internal and external. Like, we have an internal and external world. And I know a lot of people have seen past that, but it's really hard to do. We're programmed as humans, not by society, but by our ancestors and our genetics, to see the world a certain way. And it's really funny because, I don't know, there's one little adage. Somebody was talking about when a tree falls in the wood and no one's there to hear it, does it really make a sound? And that's always bothered me, not bothered me, but just been like, okay, that's like saying, wow, what if we really don't exist? My internal is me, and my external would be the world, you. Your internal is you, and I am your external. So therefore, there is no internal or external. There just is. And when a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, no, it doesn't. Of course, I used to say, yes, it does. But the idea behind that saying it's to make people think a little bit deeper about what exactly sound is. Sound is a word that we use to describe the vibration of airwaves upon our eardrum, creating an audible sound. That's what a sound is to us. A sound is something that we hear through our ears. A sound does not exist independently outside of the eardrum. It's only vibrations in the air. So what we perceive as a sound, another animal or creature may not even hear if they are on a different hearing, if they hear on a different frequency, whatever it may be. They might sense it as vibration. So when you take it that way, no, literally it's not a sound. And now when you put it in that way, it allows people to kind of get past the whole, like they're missing the whole point. The whole point is that word, sound. And Zen has a lot of little stories and ideas like that, where the student goes to the teacher and asks him for something, and he says, do this, and he goes back and he says, do this, and he goes back, and the guy says, do this, and he comes back and he says, I did what you told me, and it didn't do any good. And he said, why did you listen to me? You should have done your own thing. That kind of stuff, It's not about teaching anyone. And I think that's kind of like what the Buddhists and the Zen teachers, what's so funny about the difference between them and other gurus or helpers, is that they don't try to teach you anything. They try to unteach you. And that's a pretty interesting concept. Instead of trying to indoctrinate you with all these ideas that they've been told are true, they choose to try to unravel the system that we've come to believe is true, and but without totally detaching from it. And I think that's the key. You don't detach from society. You don't become a hermit. You don't escape into your own world, because then you become internal, and the external fails to not only assist you, but you fail to assist the external. I think that that whole idea of just not unlearning what you've learned, but unlearning your own thoughts. That's what the teachers would say. Hey, the student would say something and they'd say, why do you think this? And they'd go by and explain why they think that. And and the teacher would be there not to tell them they're right or wrong, but to say, think deeper about that. I think we need more of that in this world. I think we need more of teachers who want to not press their ideas upon others to make them feel reinforced, but rather to assist others in becoming their own self. Because from what I've seen in my lifetime and the experiences I've had with people, I have yet to see anyone ever convince anyone that their belief system is true and that theirs was wrong, or that something that you have to believe this in order to have this. I think that my favorite teachers and people to listen to are the ones that don't push their shit on you, because it's very shallow. When if a Zen Buddhist, if a Zen monk were to have a student come up and ask him a question and he says, what are you, stupid? Look, it says it right here. That would be, pretty infuriating to someone, but it's more of a joke. It's taking life with a grain of salt, but taking it seriously at the same time, and realizing that we're here on a mission, whatever that mission may be. I don't have any deep philosophies about why the world is the way it is, other than nature wants it that way. And I've had long disputes with people about whether or not that we're meant to have all this technology, or whether we're meant to have the turmoil and the crime and all the violence that happens in society. And going back through history, I see it as just a part of life. I don't see it as something that needs to be conquered or something that needs to be stopped, because it puts the perspective out. Now, how would you know a good person if you didn't know bad people? How would you know who is really there to help you and who's there to harm you if you've never been harmed? And I know that it doesn't always work balanced for everyone. Some people are harmed, and they're really good people that get harmed doing innocent things and don't deserve it. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who have nothing bad happen to them, and they're just assholes. So we see the world as unbalanced, and we get angry with it, angry with the fact that people don't see things the way that we do. And so my mission in life with people is not to get people to see things the way I do, or for me to learn to see things the way they do, but rather to intermingle our life's searching and our life's missions in order to accommodate for everyone. Because I don't see any reason to dismiss someone who's believed something for their entire life, because I would feel, I would be annoyed if someone dismissed everything that I'd worked for in my life, Although I'm pretty open-ended, if tomorrow I was presented with some new ultimate truth, I would have no problem swaying my thoughts to whatever I'm told, For example, a lot of people are waiting for a sign that's so blatant that they can truly believe it without having to think twice. And I think that's never going to come, because even if Jesus came down to an atheist and said, I exist, I have landed, I'm here to, help you in your soul. If the person's not ready for that and they don't believe it, it's not going to happen. It's just like a non-UFO believer sees a UFO. They're going to trick themselves in their mind into thinking that it wasn't a UFO. And likewise, a UFO fanatic who sees a plane acting strangely is going to convince themselves it was a UFO. Not always. I'm just giving an example. Whatever we're involved in our lives, and whatever we dig deep for, tends to be what we see. You're only going to observe things that you're involved in. It's just kind of like when you're seeing triple-digit numbers. If you're thinking about it, you're going to see more of them. For example, if your eye sways to a 444 and you're like, I can't believe I just saw that. Your whole peripheral vision, you pick up everything. Your mind knows you saw that, so you go to it. Likewise, when you're open-minded and you're open to not every suggestion as being truth, but every suggestion as being possible, it makes it a lot easier to talk with people about life, and to get some true feelings out without feeling like you're pressing your opinions upon someone else. I have no problem when people really press their opinions upon me. It doesn't bother me anymore. I find it kind of enjoyable to see what gets people excited, what makes people, happy, what gets them interested. But, I keep a lot of my deepest beliefs to myself because they can't be expressed in words. These are only, that's what Zen is. I guess that word would be a perfect word for that, to describe something that cannot be expressed in language. And there's so much of it. Just so much of it. I think that in this world, sometimes we forget to stop and look around and see things for what they really are, whatever that may be. I'll be working for hours and building stuff, and then I'll stop and I'll sit down like this and look at a pile of lumber and think, okay, that went through a machine, it's pressure treated, it's got all these chemicals in it. Before that it went through a lumber mill, before that it was a tree, before that it was carbon, and the mind can go through some just wild ideas. There was a period in my life where I was so obsessed with nanotechnology, and I was so obsessed with nanotechnology and atomic structure and the building blocks and the electrons and the exchange of electrons and how gases and everything work, that everywhere I walked, I felt like I was walking on air. Or I guess air is not a good example, because air has its own molecules, but every time I walked on the ground I thought, this isn't solid matter. Matter is a description of a bunch of atoms held together by bonds, and the atoms are mostly empty space. And I would say, in my opinion, that atoms are all empty space. They say if you compressed it down to just the neutron, it would be like the sun compared to the solar system or something, very small amount. But I think even if you break that down further, down into the quarks, you end up with further energy levels, quantum energy, quantum entanglement, and all these weird different ideas that we can't comprehend. You start thinking about that too much, you go nuts. So eventually it fades. And what I'm saying is that whenever I go through a phase like that, it makes life really interesting for a while, but I miss some of the other things. So I have to keep open to everything. And I think Zen philosophy really, really has helped me along my way. And I'm sure it's helped many others too. You don't hear a lot about Zen. People think of it as feng shui or organizing your furniture right, or everything Zen, just relaxed or mellow. Zen is unspoken. Zen is unknowable, unteachable, and that's why it's funny, to me. Trying to teach the unteachable. So instead of teaching someone a dogma, you're teaching someone to find their own truth, and that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I think we all need to just get along and stop dividing ourselves, but I also don't see that happening anytime soon. I can just see people educating themselves to the best of their ability and utilizing that as best they can in life. I'm 37 now, and by the time I'm 57, I hope to be completely, well, not complete in my thinking, but to the point where I don't have to any longer consider angles, where I've absorbed all the information I can that's written, that's been spoken, that I've listened to everything, read every book. I like to read, but I'm not interested in reading like the Bible or some of these religious texts because they're hard to read. So I put them on audiobook, put them on random and whatever, and listen to them on my headphones. I've been listening to the Book of Urantia lately. Very interesting concepts in it. I don't take it as truth. I don't take it as gospel. In fact, it might be completely bullshit. But I owe it to myself to listen to it. And it's just fascinating, you know. So once I've absorbed all the information I can, I've learned everything that's out there right now, then all I have to do is just keep up with, modern day stuff. And, scholastics aren't for everyone, but I have to learn the history and I have to learn the meaning behind everything. I'm very interested in etymology, learning about words and where they come from, and you use that and you can build a more complete picture of life, and that works for me. So I better get up to work. I can't just slack all day. Peace.